Yes, it's brown. Nothing you see here is quite what it seems. Nothing you see here is quite what it seems. When I was a kid growing up in Maine, late 90s, it was kind of difficult finding info on anything automotive. You want info on anything automotive? I know that the internet existed back then, but it was still too pricey for my family. We were lower middle class. We saw toilet paper, the quilted kind, as luxurious. So we usually get the sandpaper kind, but sometimes we get the quilted kind. So basically, wiping your bare ass on something soft is seen as a luxury. So the only way we get to know anything automotive, or get any info, is usually through magazines. Sometimes the newsstand in town don't even carry those things. Sometimes we have to go to the city, go to a bookstore and find the up-to-date versions, because the newsstand sometimes gets the latest, no, not the latest issue. They sometimes get an issue late, or sometimes not get it at all. And getting car brochure is still difficult because, well, we only have car lots in my city. Well, not my city, my town. The big city has the dealerships, and my parents don't want to drive, an hour or so just for me to get brochures and for them to get a bit, sad because they couldn't afford the cars. When we read the reviews back then, it was like, reading a report. Basically, like, for me, it was like reading top secret reports on how it was like, because these cars, you rarely see them. It was priced out of basically everybody else because it was so fast, it was so exclusive. So getting a sneak peek was like finding government confidential secrets and reading them aloud. Like, it felt illegal to know, But yeah, it was fun. And when you see, pictures of these things and these things going fast, a lot of people put them on icon status pretty quick. And, it's a car that's great to look at and people think it handles great and everything. But now, well, anything and everything about a car, you can look up how it handles, how it drives, how it's lived with, how it's made sometimes, and even, well, how every bit of technology on the car works, and how bad it is sometimes with some cars. And that segues perfectly towards this car, because this car, despite being icon status for the 80s, the forefront of technology, well, the forefront of sports car technology, well, no, not sports car, supercar, the forefront of the supercars, this thing, right now, today, is ultimately crap. Now, I know, Sky Blue report says that the Bollide is not going to be as good as a modern car, maybe the Mondeo or even the Scintilla. But let me remind you, as a supercar, as something that's supposed to be, the best performance car we have at the time, it was ultimately still crap. All of the handling problems with the Bollide stems from simply the placement of the engine. The Bollide is supposed to be mid-engine. On paper, it's supposed to be a good thing, but it's only a good thing if the car's engine is between the front and rear axle, i.e. within the wheelbase. So an ideal design would be for the engine to be placed transversely, and then they have a transaxle, and that thing would be mid-engine and would be good. But the problem is the Bollide's engine is placed longitudinally, so the engine fits within the wheelbase, and then some of it sits on the axle, and then some of it protrudes behind the rear axle, then the transaxle. So it created a car that is quite rear heavy, and when you give it some stick or you mistime your throttle input during a corner, well, let's just say a lot of people crashed and some people died. Now, that would qualify the Bollide as a rear-engine vehicle, but that's just the handling. We haven't even gotten to the worst part, the engine. The Bollide, when first released, came with two engine options, the 320, the 3.2-liter V8, and the 350, the 3.5-liter V8. The 3.5-liter V8 making 260 horsepower at peak power. And of course, the 220 made, of course, less, and the US models of those cars made significantly less. But this is an EU model, so originally made 260 horsepower. Okay, now let's just talk about this car, this bolide to be precise. Now, this bolide was found in a field in Utah. It was abandoned over some divorce settlement, but we don't go into the details. I'll just explain it in the blog. But of course, the previous owner who sold it to me found it, contacted the original owner's wife who won the car, bought it for $900 and brought it to Velasco. He then had it somewhat restored. Well, not had it, but he fixed it up. He replaced some parts such as the wheels, the bumpers, and the engine, and the drivetrain basically, and the steering wheel. Because those parts were either broken or missing. The engine and the drivetrain, whole drivetrain being completely missing. Now, he sold the car to me for a considerable sum, and now here we are. There were some modifications done to this bolide, as you can see, but what you don't realize is that this car is not even wearing its original color. Yes, the paint is not original. This car did not come out of the factory wearing baby diarrhea brown paint. No. This car was found this color, but it was not in this color during the factory. The previous owner found it in this baby diarrhea brown, but as I was looking through the bolide registry, I saw that this VIN correlated to a EU spec 350 V8 that was imported to the US, given a VIN, and was originally finished with Argento with a black interior. The black interior still remains, but the car had been repainted. I've become to speculate that during the divorce settlement, the car was repainted as, something, but we don't know. I'll tell you more details on the blog. Now, let's just move on to the modifications. First, interior-wise. Interior-wise is originally kept as is, just, fixed up a bit. The dashboard is now currently the turbo dashboard that came from a GTT model. Originally, the previous owner had a DigiDash installed, but I didn't like quite the look of it, so he installed the turbo gauges for me. Thank you. And then the Lecno Classico steering wheel, because the original steering wheel was cracked and broken. And now we can move into outside mods. Now let's just move on to the modification on the outside of the car. There is GTT side intakes. Suspension-wise and steering-wise, it's got GTT components for suspension and steering components. And somehow, ABS. Yes, the previous owner installed ABS onto this car. Maybe he got a kit, maybe he installed it from a different car, but I don't know, but the ABS works, and the ABS is good for this car. The drivetrain for this bolide is a 2.2-liter inline-4. Yes, folks, that's right. I've got a Soliat Fieri engine in a bolide. I've basically bought myself a kit car. Laugh, if you may, at my bolide for being basically a kit car, but remember, it's a real Civetta. It has the VINs going back to the factory. It has real bolide parts. The chassis is a Civetta-made chassis, not a custom-made chassis covered with some wooden panels and some plastic. It's a real bolide, albeit with a different heart. But this engine ain't no slouch either. It's because this bolide here with this inline-4 engine produces 540 horsepower. That's right, folks, 540. More than double a stock 350 engine would make. It has 500 horsepower in a bolide. And yes, that is because the engine itself is a stage 3 block with stage 2 turbochargers. So it makes 540 horsepower. The previous owner had a stage 3. It was 550 horsepower, only a 10 horsepower bump. So he downgraded it to the stage 2 because he had it lying around and installed it for me because I found the boost as too much during my first test drive. This car is a struggle to drive. The gas and the clutch are heavy. It requires somebody with the strength of a kickboxer in their feet and the endurance of a triathlete to operate. The gear stick requires somebody with long arms to operate fourth and fifth. So if you're here with short arms, well, you are SOL. Consider a sequential swap. And the steering wheel can only be operated by a bodybuilder who does upper body workouts every single time he goes to the gym and has been taking steroids ever since the age of 15. And even if such a person does exist, they wouldn't be able to fit in this car. This car is a bit cramped, being an Italian car and a sports car, no, supercar at that. This car, yes, the seats can go front and back, but only like a couple of inches, and it does not give you enough room to basically feel comfortable in this car, because there was no such thing as comfort in this thing back then. So if you're taller and shorter than a few inches than necessary for this car, you're SOL basically. You need basically that tool with the extending gas pedal. That's what you need. And to be fair, driving this car feels like a balancing act. Like you're in a circus, because you're trying to balance, like you have to operate the clutch in a certain way. If you don't, the car will stall, and then you have to hit the gas in a certain way. If not, you will have full boost. You have to operate the gear in a certain way. If not, it will grind, it will whatever. You have to take care of the car. And this car, to be honest, will basically humble you. This car will humble you in the way you drive. The way this car humbles you is on a first chance, if not second chance basis sometimes. So sometimes you will be lucky and you will be driving this car carefully, but then you mistime a turn and you will spin out. Now that's if you're lucky. The car gives you a second chance because you are going slow. What if you're going fast? You are already driving it fast through the passes, and then you did it wrong. You basically did wrong by the car. Well, guess what? You spin out, you crash out, and possibly you die. The car basically forces you to be perfect. It is basically an Asian parent on wheels. Yes, it forces you to be perfect in everything, because it is basically like a conductor. It forces you to be perfect, so it can create a symphony of sound and speed and magic. To anybody of you here who wants to buy a Bollide and save enough money up for a Bollide, I implore you, if you drive in an erratic manner, if you don't drive smooth, if you don't listen to the car, and if you are arrogant in your driving, let me tell you, this car is not for you. This car is not for you. If you want, go buy an ATK. Go buy an 800. Go buy an I series. Go buy the K series. Go buy the C series. Go buy a Bastion. If you want a Civetta, go buy a Mondello. Go buy a Scintilla. This car is a Civetta. This car is fast. But let me tell you, it's not for people like you. It's not for drivers like you who drive erratically. It requires respect. It demands respect. Because if you don't, well, that's the last time we'll see of you. Because this car just humbled you.